Hey there, kiddos. It is our first math video of the year. Yay! You will see at the top here, you'll see an I can statement. Every lesson will have an I can statement, which I expect you to write down in your math notebook. So I can recognize fractions as sums of unit fractions. I need you to write that in your math notebook. Now you may pause the video to do that, or if you can do that while you're watching, that's fine. I will tell you with every video, you may come across some things like, ooh, I don't remember doing that before, or gosh, I'd forgotten about that. I encourage you, if that comes up, to pause and just jot a couple notes down in your notebook to help you remember, because this is going to be a valuable tool and resource for you throughout the year. Now, my first hope is that when you see fractions, your reaction isn't this. But alas, if it is, remember the power of yet. I don't know how to do fractions yet. Remember, that's the big key you need to remember. Okay, the power of yet is huge. You're still working on it. You're going to persevere. You're going to do great. I have no worries. So, let's talk about the parts of the fraction. This is going to be review from what you did in 4th grade last year. So I'm going to define those parts for you. We're going to talk about those unit fraction pieces. A fraction is made up of two parts, the numerator and denominator. Okay, and it can be represented as numerator out of denominator, or n over d. The numerator in a fraction, that's what tells you the number of unit fractions in the fraction. And again, I'll define unit fraction for you here in just a couple minutes. The denominator is the number of equal parts in the whole. So think about a pizza. If a pizza is cut into 6 slices, the denominator would be 6. Remember, it's equal is the key word there. A fraction is the sum of unit fractions. And a tip to help you remember what goes where, the numerator up north and the denominator downstairs. So, let's talk about that unit fraction. As promised, here it is. A unit fraction represents one equal part of a whole. One. That's one. One equal part. Really, really important. Okay? A unit fraction has a numerator of 1. 1. Remember, unit fraction, think numerator of 1. Really important. Again, if that's something you've forgotten about, that might be a good thing to write down in your math notebook. Pause it. Jot it down, and then you can keep going. Now, the unit fraction 1 over d is one of d equal parts, where the d equals the denominator. So it could be any number of parts that were cut up down there. Don't be confused by that, just telling you how we write unit fractions. Remember, the key is the numerator is 1. Okay? Now, the fraction below is divided into 8 equal parts, or eighths. So you can count those if you don't believe me. Each part is one of 8 equal parts, or 1/8. Remember, it's equal parts. Each one of those is 1/8 of the whole. The fraction 5/8 is the sum of 5/8. Sounds kind of like, yeah, I know that. All right. Remember, sum just means addition. All right. So 5/8, the way we can write that in unit fractions is we can add it 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8. Now here's another way to look at that. Here's that same fraction bar. Let's circle those 5/8 right there. And let's put that addition string right over the top. So you can see each of those parts, when we add them together, we have 5/8 of that fraction bar. When you add or subtract fractions, the denominator stays the same. Important to know. Now sometimes you may have to make a common denominator to add or subtract fractions, but we're not quite there yet. For now, we're just going to focus on fractions that have the same denominator to start with. You only add or subtract the numerators. The denominator does not change. Now you may also remember this from last year. You can do this as a quick multiplication problem. It's 5 times 1/8. That's the same as doing repeated addition. Remember, multiplication is a quick way to do repeated addition. So let's look at fraction bar patterns for just a moment. So you can see I've got these fraction bars over here. And you can see in each one of these, the whole, or the length of the fraction bar, is exactly the same. So what happens as the number in the denominator increases? So we go from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 12. What's happening to that whole as the number in the denominator increases? Well, the number of equal parts increase. So here I've got 2 equal parts, but way down here I've got 12 equal parts. You'll also notice that the size of each part decreases or gets smaller. All right. So if I compare 1/2 way up here, okay. So if I look up here, I've got 1/2. This is my 1/2, right? Down here I've got 1/12. You can clearly see that 1/2 is much larger than 1/12. This 1/12, the part has gotten smaller or decreased. The more parts you have in the same size whole, the smaller each part must be. Okay, so this one I've only got 2 parts, but here I've got 12 parts. If it's the same size that we start with, then each part has to get smaller. So think about pizza, because I like pizza, and it's something that's already divided into fractions for us anyways. If I order a pizza cut into 6 parts, you can see that each one of those parts is worth 1/6, thinking of that unit fraction. If I order a pizza cut into 8 parts, each part is 1/8. You can clearly see by looking at the pictures here that the slices that are 1/8 in that same size whole are smaller than the ones that are 1/6. All right, so we're going to do some sample problems. What I want you to do is I want you to pause the video. I'm going to give you a little bit of directions, but I want you to pause the video here in just a second, and I'll tell you when. And I want you to solve problems 1 and 2. So you can just write in your math notebook, problem 1, problem 2, and write the answers. And when you're done with that, then go ahead and play the video. So pause the video now, and then we'll go over the answers here in just a minute. Okay, so 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5, that's 3/5. If I add that together, because remember I'm just adding the numerators, the denominator stays the same. In problem number 2, 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 is 5/8. Now, again, we're going to come to a second set of problems here. There's a couple things you need to do here, so pay really careful attention. I know this last year in 4th grade, this really threw a lot of kids because they always forgot exactly what to do with these. So pay careful attention here. You've got 3/4 and 5/6. It says you're going to write fractions as the sum of unit fractions. That's just like what you did up here. And products of whole numbers and unit fractions. Remember, products means multiplication. So you're going to do a multiplication problem like the repeated addition. Now, if you get stuck, you could go back and look at the slide that I did earlier where I showed you how to do that. Okay? So I want you to pause the video and I want you to solve this problem with the sum of unit fractions and products of whole numbers and unit fractions. When you're ready, you may press play again. So let's look at problem number 3. 3/4 is the same as saying 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4, or I could do 3 times 1/4 as a product and a unit fraction. Okay. Second problem, 5/6. 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6, or I could do 5 times 1/6. And that's the end of the lesson today.